Welcome to the Modern CPA Success Show, where we're 100% focused on helping accounting firms achieve success. If you're an accounting firm owner who wants to learn how to grow your firm by providing virtual CFO services, then this podcast is for you.
Welcome to another podcast. Today we are bringing Greg Wallis back, and we are going to talk about his experiences as a virtual CFO. So we thought this is a great topic. Greg has been with us for about 9 months now, so we want to talk about those first 9 months, probably more specifically those first 100 days, and kind of what they feel like, what they are like, adding new clients, kind of the rush of all that stuff. So hopefully we go into all of these topics. But Greg, prior to going down that path, do you mind giving us just a little bit of your background prior to coming to Summit so we can kind of understand where you're coming from?
Sure. Thanks, Jamie. Appreciate that. Yeah. I'm Greg Wallis and joined Summit in the beginning of July last year. I'd taken some time off, about 18 months off during the pandemic to focus on some volunteer work. But prior to that, I was the top financial person at a couple of different age groups, CFO with a couple of college organizations, higher ed, and then got into a publishing company for about 18 months as well. And then prior to that, I had been in public accounting for 10 years, and so had started as a staff person on the audit side, moved forward in my career, became a manager, ended up in some contract financial accounting services, sort of an outsourced CFO practice back in the aughts, if you will. And I had the opportunity, after somebody reached out to me, a recruiter reached out to me about the opportunity at Summit to be back in an accounting role and really being back in front of clients. And so that was really what I was really interested in doing, was getting back in, working with clients again, and being in a senior financial leadership role. And so it was really bringing the blend of my experiences together, and it's been a great experience.
Great. So we also have, as always, Adam Hale here. So Adam, after Greg kind of described his experience, do you want to spend a little bit of time, again, I know we've talked about this before, but I think it's important for our listeners to understand like what we look for in a CFO and kind of the backgrounds that come in and what we're expecting when they are interviewing?
Yeah, it's all over the board. I think that, as you were kind of explaining, Greg, what you had in terms of a background and what we do here, I don't know. I guess I've been a little bit jaded in this instance. I used to always think everybody had to be like that shoebox accountant, come from public accounting, people with government backgrounds. No offense to anybody with a government background. They always kind of scared me just because of the pace of the position. Even higher ed, it's just a kind of a slower paced kind of a job, and there's usually a lot of people surrounding you. They usually have a lot more resources. And then in corporate, it's like, well, cool, you're used to digging a mile deep, which is what we want you to do here, but can you also juggle 14 different relationships? And of course, people in corporate accounting would say, well, yeah, I'm used to doing all kind of multitasking all day long. And it's like, yeah, that's not what I quite mean. Whenever you're dealing with completely different siloed relationships, it's different. But then whenever you go and you find somebody in public accounting, they're like, yeah, I'm used to dealing with 100 relationships. 15 sounds like a dream. But whenever they figure out how deep they have to go in those relationships, then they're usually like, no, I usually don't go that far with it. And it's like, well, of course you don't. That's why you have 100 relationships. So I guess whenever I hear somebody's background, of course, I always look for if you've done anything on your own. Like Greg was saying, he's been in those relationships where he had to be that virtual or that fractional CFO and just kind of learn. You're also looking just kind of for a wide breadth of things, because in this industry, what we do is it's pretty, although you're going to have your niches, you have a tendency to have a little bit of an agnostic book where you have all kinds of different industries, and you don't want people to be afraid of that and lean too much into their past, in particular. Not always the case, but most of the time. And so you want people to be a little bit more well-rounded. But yeah, you're just looking for somebody that's got confidence, somebody that has a wide variety of background and skills, and really open-minded to learning. because it's not just about learning what we do and how we do it, but it's about learning what the client does and how they do it. And so if you find somebody that's really eager to learn and excited about helping, trying to be a business advisor first, leveraging their financial background, that's kind of the people we're looking for.
Yeah, I think to Adam's point, I think I've interviewed for a lot of jobs in my career and like really looked to fill different roles. And I think the CFO has been one of the hardest to fill, because I think it's one of those roles where while a candidate may look perfect on a resume and an application, oftentimes, it's really hard to peg what the perfect candidate is. And I would say in almost any other role I hired for, I at least had a 75% idea of what that perfect candidate looked like. And that's what I was looking for. Where here, it's like I get surprised a lot with like, okay, that candidate's great, or that candidate's not nearly what I thought. And it's just based on their experience. So I think that's a really good point. And I know Adam and I have been through that experience together over the last 7 years. So understand where we're both coming from. So Greg, let's turn around. Let's talk about, I know when you first started at Summit, we handled you with kid gloves a little bit. So you want to talk about those first 90 days or 120 days where you were asking us for work and we were like, oh, don't worry, it'll come. So
yeah, that's
let's
for
talk
sure.
about those first couple months.
Yeah, no, it was, it was the summer months. I hadn't been really doing much work over the previous 18 months. And so I was really eager to get started. And, the ramp up time and the learning curve of just, getting to understand the Summit way of doing things. And more importantly, for an older dog like me, some of the technologies, I had been used to working, in an office environment where, everything was set up. If I had a problem, somebody could come in and show me what to do. Here I had to be a little bit more entrepreneurial and figure things out. I think, Summit did a great job of getting me geared up with things and tools, but then just, learning how to work in a virtual environment. So that was probably the first and the steepest climb for me, having come out of, a traditional office environment and learning to navigate the virtual world, and just learning the tools and some of the virtual office type things, and then just going through a lot of the training. I mean, so I spent probably the first 45 days really immersing myself in, understanding the philosophy, how we approach clients, how we look at things, and then, correlating that to the tool sets that Summit has developed over the 14, 15 years that they've been in business. And so Summit was so far ahead of most companies when the pandemic hit, and they've been virtual and fully distributed for years and years. And so just onboarding with that process and getting familiar, that was the first thing. And then the clients began to come. At first it was a couple of existing clients that were, there was a CFO who left, and so I picked up an existing client or two. And really what was great was just being able to, I think as Adam was talking about, just being curious about a new client. I'm not shy about asking questions, really getting to understand a client's business. I mean, that's the fun part. And then, working with the existing team, the senior accountant to the data analyst, people who've been working with the client, just trying to, tap from them, what goes on with the client, what are the key, key points for them. But then, again, just having that open ability to talk to clients and be a fresh face and a fresh set of questions coming from my experience, saying, tell me, what are those things that keep you up at night? So I think, the relationship process for me is comes a little bit more naturally than perhaps some others, and that really is where I sort of spent my time as I began to go through some monthly close processes, begin to dig into the numbers, begin to understand the drivers of the business. I think that's really key. And I've always been focused on what's the cash, where's the cash forecast, and because at the end of the day, our owners are most concerned about where are they from a cash flow perspective, how does that fit into their objectives, whether it's paying their taxes or making future investments. And so just beginning to understand that. And then, as Jamie was saying, I was starting to ask, geez, I'd like to be more billable. I'd like to have more time, be more proactive on clients. And then, then all of a sudden there were a couple of new clients that came to Summit and, began to go through the onboarding process. And that was really great because that's really where I was able to, from day one, see how we build those tools out for a new client. And so I wasn't trying to figure out all the past, but rather, figure out the present. And so that's really where I think it all came together and started to gel for me. And from the theoretical type of instructional videos that I was going through to the practical reality of here's how this, forecasting process applies to this particular client. So, and, as Jamie has said, now I've got 10 clients and, it's, and I think the experience, again, back to Adam's comment is, I talk to every client every week. When I was in public accounting, there was time frames for audits and work that we did, and I wasn't talking to every client every week. But here I talk to every client at least once a week, and sometimes many more times than that. And so, I think the skill set is just being able to navigate and have that ability to change, gears pretty quickly to be able to switch and say, okay, where would we last leave off with this client? What are they focused on? What do I need to deliver for them, this week, next week, et cetera?
Yeah, the way we look at our onboarding at Summit is really kind of 4 legs, right? There's 4 parts of it. So one, and I think Greg mentioned all of these, which is good, but I think the first is we do have a pretty detailed online video training session, right? So it's part of our course, but also some supplemental things as part of the course. And so that's if, those first couple of weeks, if you're just sitting around and have nothing to do, just fire up a video. So we want to make sure people have access to that. The second is some shadowing, right? So, having Greg be on a client with another CFO and just watching. Camera doesn't have to be on, but just sit there listening to how Adam handles a client, how Adam handles questions, how his meeting cadence is. And so that's kind of the second leg. The third leg is really just having conversations, and I think that's a lot of where Adam and I come in is, I just had a meeting with a client about this. Let's talk about this, Greg. And a lot of these conversations are the exact same things the videos are saying, but they're just in a little more detailed and a little more interactive and a chance to ask questions as we go through it and kind of understand, as Greg put it, the Summit way and the way we deliver. So that's kind of the third leg. And then the fourth leg, which usually comes last, but depending on how crazy we are and how busy we are, could come on day one, but it's really those onboarding new clients. That's the best way to learn is just get your hands dirty, but it's really hard to do that without those other 3 legs of at least understanding what we do and how we do and where we do it and why we do it. So like those first 3 legs are really important to do. And so I think that's why, to Greg's credit and to a lot of new CFOs' credits, we get a lot of that about that 90-day mark is, okay, I'm ready to get my hands a little dirtier than they are already because we're spending so much on those first 3 legs, depending on how busy we are. So Adam, anything to expand on that and your thoughts on kind of our onboarding process?
Yeah, it just makes me nervous as hell. So yeah, because it's one of those things, and so we hear this all the time, and like you said, it's no matter what we do, Greg, and I'd love to hear your input on this, as many things as we show you during that first 90 days, I mean, let's be real, like it doesn't really matter until you do it. Because I can't tell you how many times I've met with a CFO whenever they pick up a client and they're like, oh, I never heard this, I never heard this, I never heard this. And it's like, yeah, you probably did, but it was like a 30-second blurb and it just didn't resonate with you. You know what I mean? So I'm sure we covered that. It just didn't make any sense. So then once you go through those real life examples with them, and you would love to be able to do that just with your own client, but just like anything else, the reality is like you're listening, but you're not like owning that task. So until it's really like saddled with you having to be the one to deliver that to the client all by your lonesome, you don't really put the brain power and everything behind it. And then the other thing that trips people up that Greg mentioned, I think a lot of times, which is kind of that makes me a little uneasy, is I get it. We have a lot of technology and we have a lot of tools, but at the end of the day, you're a smart person, Greg. All I need you to do is close your eyes, write it down on a piece of paper. I have people on the team that can put it into dashboards, do this, do that. I need you to architect what you want it to look like. I have people that can build it for you, so don't get hung up with that. And I think sometimes in our first 90 days, I think team members, senior accountants and CFOs, they get overwhelmed with all the tools and learning what the summit way is. And it's like, yeah, what I really need you to do is be a relationship manager, fake it till you make it, exude confidence, really dive deep into the client relationship first. And then we can take all those other conversations, offline about how to build it, how to put it together. But I need you to intuitively understand. That's why I was saying, like, curiosity for me is what that is. So what scares the hell out of me, Greg, is like Greg's like, give me. And I'm like, okay, cool. But as soon as I do, you're on your own, bud. You know what I mean? And this client, I just sold, I told him, hey, we do this, and we're going to solve this, and this for you. And then if Greg comes in, he goes, well, I'm new. I'm trying to figure out the summit way. Then the client's like, what? Like, what's that got to do with me? Like, I just need you to figure me out. And so it's one of those things where you always have to kind of behind the scenes be like, hey, like, be confident up front, and then we'll figure it out on the back end. Like, you have plenty of support. So anyway, I don't know if you felt like that, even though you felt like you were really adequately maybe trained, in quotes up front, it was still a totally different ball game, wasn't it? Whenever you had to take on your first client.
And it was. And again, I think to your point is that those existing clients that I came onto, I didn't know how the sausage was made. I didn't know how the forecast was developed. I wasn't, knee deep in the non-financial metrics that help drive that necessarily, and that's a little harder to uncover once it's built. But being part of the building process for those new onboarded clients has really shown me where, okay, I get it now. I understand how our payroll grid is constructed and how that then translates into our forecasting product, and I've learned a lot from our technology team just by, to your point, sort of getting in and doing it, at least to understand what it can do. And now I'm much more comfortable saying, okay, this is, hey, tech team, data analyst, this is what I need you to build out. I need it to do these things. I'm trying to model your perspective, which is, draw it out on a piece of paper and have them build it and then come back, review it, tweak it. And, so that, again, I can stay focused on, the pressing needs of the client and answering their business and strategy questions rather than just, is this debit and credit, going to the right account.
And I think that's, one thing that we've found in hiring, getting back to that, is that finding people that are willing to get their hands dirty. Like, when we describe this job to people, we're describing what Adam just said. Like, your main job is to be that consultant and to be that person that's their partner and there to really help them guide them through their financial statement process. But there are times where we really need to get your hands dirty. And I know you did a lot of that early on, Greg, and I think you learned a lot from having to get your hands dirty. So a lot of times we'll hire someone with so much experience and so much like, I've had a team of 20 accountants and 3 administrative assistants. I don't even know how to do an expense report because I've been doing this for the last 15 years. And so we'll hire those people that are like, no, I'm not going to go in and book a journal entry. So I think that's the other thing we find. And Greg, you want to talk about some of those experiences where you really had to get your hands dirty and kind of how that helped you understand, like you said, how the sausage was made?
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, we're a business of people, right? And we've had, there's been some turnover, like all businesses, and, everybody's experiencing a little bit of that. And so as, a CFO left or maybe a senior accountant left, as we're staffing things back up, all of a sudden, I might have 3 weeks on a client and then I'm the senior person, the most tenured person. And so, you really have to dig in and, because now you're showing the next new person, how to get it done. And, at the end of the day, I mean, the accounting and the finance function, I've had years of experience, and I've had, back to Jamie's point, a lot of different clients and a lot of different industries. And so, these client businesses aren't so complex that we just have to make sure we get in, understand what are those key drivers, and then make sure that the story is that you understand about the business is coming out in the financial reporting process. And so, we've got a lot of great tools in addition to just straight up financial statements. We've got a lot of data and benchmarking that we do for, certainly our digital agencies that we work with. And that's really where the power of some of the information is in that analytics, and saying, how do we then apply those analytics to, how does a client take that and use that to improve their business? And when do they see, when do we see warning signs? When profitability starts to wane, is our client overstaffed? And so, we have to be those people that are willing to have the tough conversations with clients. And I've had a couple of those, saying, look, you really have too many people in some instances. You're going to have to let some people go, or else, here's what you're going to see, 6-12 months from now in terms of your profitability and ultimately your cash. And so, we just need honest, folks that will have that tough conversation and not avoid it. The earlier we can have that conversation with the client, the more they appreciate it.
What do you think of I think the big difference too is, and this is the hardest thing for us to kind of talk through, because a lot of, obviously the VCFOs that come here have a lot of financial knowledge. Now, to Jamie's point, sometimes it's not one of those things where somebody's super technical anymore. I used to wear it like a badge of honor, like, give me 2 senior accountants, I can do their job, and another senior accountant. Now, not so much. Like, I couldn't do I'm not half of a senior accountant anymore. So we all kind of progress in our career. So there is a little bit of that trust but verify. So I need you to be technical. I need you to help train the senior accountant to look at stuff the way you look at stuff and do those kind of things. I think that's a learning lesson. Sometimes, like for a new person, Greg, you come in and you're like, oh, cool, the senior accountant's been on this account for 2 years, so they know everything. Bad assumption. You know what I mean? Like, make sure you review the balance sheet, make sure you review the income statement every month with them, train them on how you look at stuff. It's a great opportunity for them as well. But the other thing is that probably is a little bit mission critical is the difference between approaching situations as a business advisor as opposed to a financial person. Like, of course, our get out of jail free card, and I say it all the time, whenever you overstep your bounds, all you have to say is, financially speaking, and then if they're never going to really go toe to toe with you on that one, then you can poke your nose into something operational that you have no business, poking your nose into, because then they'll respect it and say, no, you just don't understand, Adam. It's actually this and this, and it's like, oh, okay, cool. I was coming at it from this angle. But I think what clients look for us to do in this role is be very proactive with the information. So they're not looking for a dissertation. They're not looking for a history lesson on what they did last month. They already lived it. These business owners don't need that. What they need to know is, what does it mean going forward? And then prompting them and asking them questions. What I get time and time again from small business owners is, I don't know what I don't know. So how was that the first time? Because again, that's different than roles that you've had in the past, because usually it's like, you're the question and answer guy. Like, somebody asks you a question, you give them an answer. Now you're expected to think of the question and then provide an answer, which is, I don't know. Do you find that challenging, at least at first, or how did you kind of acclimate to that?
I think for me, that comes a little bit more naturally, because, again, I think I am a curious person, and so I'm wanting to understand, and I'm trying to always put myself in the shoes of the owner. One specific situation is, I was working with a new client for Summit, and he was complaining about how his cash balance seemed quite low, and he was successful. He had good client relationships, and it turns out he was billing in arrears, if you will. He was incurring the time in one month and then billing it the next month, and he had very small retainers that he was billing, even though he might be doing 4x the work. And so with a couple of simple shifts, and I was asking him, well, why did you pick that number? Why did you pick X? And he said, well, that's what we started with, and we've just never adjusted. I said, well, with the client's already is making up that payment the next month, you're paying for that payroll in the current month, and you're waiting to bill it, and then you have to wait for them to pay it. So you're 45 days out from at least from when you paid that payroll. So you're financing their business. And so he went back, had conversations with the clients, moved up all the retainer amounts to a normalized regular monthly amount. Now he's reconciling quarterly, and his cash, he's got 3x the cash in the bank as of today, and that was a 90 to 120 day change. And so, those are the kind of quick wins that, with a little bit of experience, because again, he didn't know. He didn't ask him, he set the retainer, and he thought the annual retainer. And I said, go have a conversation, and sort of pressed him to do that. And so I think those are, and that was sort of a quick win, but some of the other insights would take a little bit more, digging and sort of understanding of the business. But those are the things that I think, bring real value. And, the other thing that this client doesn't have is a line of credit. So he doesn't have access. And so, just getting back to a little bit of the Summit philosophy and saying, look, have it available. It's because what you're paying on the end-use portion is minuscule. But if you run into a problem, good to have. And, so we're making some really good strides with this particular client. And, it's been one of the more fun, because you've got somebody who's really, looking to you for advice and, and taking it, acting on it.
What I like about your example there, and I think this is key, because Adam talks about being curious, and I think a lot of people think curious is just asking questions, right? Like anybody can print a list of questions from the web and just like sit there and ask questions. But I think what you described was really listening to the answers, and I think that's the key to being curious. Is okay, I'm going to ask this question, and whatever they bring back to me is either going to lead me to a tip to give them or lead me to 3 or 4 more questions so I can give them that next piece of advice. And I think, would love to have been a fly on the wall for that discussion, because I imagine it took several questions to get there. And then once you figured out the way they're billing and how their cash worked, and it was a real back and forth conversation. And I think, oftentimes, like I said, some people look at curiosity as just, I'll ask questions all day long, but no, you really want to listen to their questions and react to their answers. I think that's the key to being curious.
Yeah, no, that's really good, Jamie, because I always say make sure you have intent behind the questions that you're asking and be ready to explain why you ask them. So sometimes I will go completely in a different direction than what I originally intended, and sometimes I'm in the wrong direction, and that's okay, because and I kind of follow the 5 why kind of philosophy too, where you're just like, why, to be able to get to the root cause of something. So I'm always just kind of digging deeper and deeper and deeper. But then right whenever if you feel like you're losing the client or the client's getting frustrated while you keep pushing on certain subjects, it's really easy just and so the reason why I'm asking these questions is because I thought you do this, this, and this, and that results in this, this, and this. But what I heard you just say is you actually do it this way, which is fine, but I think maybe we can do some stuff over here that'll make it make more sense. And I probably do that on a conversation a week all the time. And then they're like, yep, that's exactly what I do. Or nope, you're wrong. I do it this way and here's why. And then I have a deeper understanding so that if I do need to go back and use one of my resources, one of you two, say, hey, Greg, I don't know what to do for this client. If you ask me 3 or 4 questions, I can actually provide you with an answer. Doesn't mean I have them all, but I've got the situation pretty much, mapped out, and I just need some advice on how to do it. And then that leads to being able to use like I said, all the resources on the team a lot easier. But if you don't ask the questions and you just come to me and you say, well, here's the problem, and then I ask you 5 questions and it's like talking to a wall, then it's like, well, Greg, you didn't you didn't source the question enough. You know what I mean? Like you need to really dig deep. So, and I'm happy to help you or give you my advice, for what that's worth, but you really need to make sure you fully understand the question and explain to the client why you ask.
And I think you can also see that internally as well, right? This is kind of one of the ways that I evaluate how CFOs are doing, is because I meet with new CFOs. We have a new batch right now. I meet with them every day for 30 minutes, saying, okay, what questions do you guys have for me? And I can tell by the questions they ask, are they doing just that, or are they just asking questions because they don't want to sit in silence with me for half an hour? So it's like, are they really asking questions that they want to know the answers to, or is it just they're trying to kill this half hour? And so I think with this new group of CFOs, every question they come to me, you can see the intent behind it. I know oh, it came from this example that just happened. Let's really dig into it. And so I think that's a skill set that you can see internally as well, because sometimes, Adam and I say all the time, hey, our door's open, come ask us a question. But sometimes people just come in because like, oh, I haven't talked to Adam this week, I better go like ask a question. And especially when you're doing that to Adam, you have to come in with your ducks in a row, because like Adam said, he'll ask the 5 whys. And if you haven't done your research, you'll get caught in the second why and be like, I don't know, I better go back and talk to them and ask that question, because it's definitely happened to me before. So.
Yeah.
Are you interested in offering virtual CFO services at your firm or scaling your existing service offerings? The Virtual CFO Playbook, How to Land $60,000 a Year Clients and Provide a Killer Client Experience, is an online series of modules that will equip you with essential tools for creating and delivering scalable VCFO services. These approaches have helped Summit CPA grow from $500,000 to upwards of $5 million in revenue over the past decade. If you're ready to grow your firm, visit summitcpa.net/VCFO Playbook to enroll now.
So Greg, the other thing that I thought was pretty unique about you coming in, we've seen this a couple times, but I don't know if we've seen it as much success with this, is you actually brought some clients to Summit, and I know some were successful and some didn't work out, but I wanted you to talk a little bit about that experience and kind of using your connections to bring in clients to Summit and kind of how that worked and how that didn't work.
Well, yeah, no, I appreciate that. I've been pretty active in networking, certainly as I was looking for a new position coming out of the pandemic, and had a couple of clients that I had done some consulting work on, just as a sole proprietor. And one came back to me and said, hey, what do you think? Have you found something? We're looking for a new CFO. And I said, well, I've just joined up with Summit, and we sort of started to explore that, and it really looked like he needed a fractional CFO. He had a good controller, but needed some higher level strategic thinking, and so we started working together, signed a statement of work, got into some of the discovery, and it turned out they didn't have all their ducks in a row. Their house was not in order. They had a controller that wasn't on board with the solution. Was really sort of sabotaging the entire relationship. It was, as it turned out, it was going to be a difficult relationship to maintain with sort of a little bit of infighting and some strife. And so, brought Jamie in. We had a conversation with the owner. He agreed. He was sensing that same sort of concern. And so, after a few weeks of doing some discovery and trying to figure out how to work together, how is this arrangement going to work, we decided that it probably wasn't quite the right time for him. And so we walked away. And this is sort of it goes back to an old Arthur Andersen philosophy: think straight, talk straight, and just being very candid about the situation. And so, I think at the end of the day, we might come back and have a client at some point when they're ready. But on the flip side, I had another group that I was consulting with, and I was trying to help them acquire a business. They went sort of quiet on that during most of the pandemic, and then came back roaring back after the vaccinations were out there, and got a call one day and said, hey, what are you up to? And we've just signed a letter of intent to acquire this business, and we're closing next week. Can you be our CFO? And they were really looking for a fractional CFO relationship. The client is, we're the headquarters in Indianapolis, the schools in West Virginia, and so we're working through that right now, and it's going to be I think it's going to be a real successful relationship for them. So, it's just being open and answering the call, and when people say, hey, are you looking? Because I still get a few of those calls, I say, well, what are you looking for? Because I might have a solution for you from a fractional standpoint. So, we can leverage that personal relationship that I might have with some previous business contacts, and we can work together again. It's just won't be working with Wallis LLC consulting firm. You'll be working with Summit, and now Anders.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's interesting because I think sometimes what we see, especially in this space, is that Greg, what I think is pretty cool is that a lot of times people will entertain, well, maybe I just need to go back and be a full-time CFO again, or sometimes, or even, hey, I can, maybe I can just handle a couple of these on my, on the side or whatever, and go back to doing that. So I think, the fact that you were so open, and I think anytime anybody reaches out to you, you're like very quick to say, hey guys, I think this should be on our radar and we should do this. So I think it's just a testament to how good of a fit you are for what we do and how we do it and everything. So I think it's really cool that you always kind of just thinking, hey, I think this client would be a good fit for us, always on the lookout for that kind of stuff. Albeit obviously we don't have like, traditional, like, hey, you need to bring a book of business or do any of that kind of stuff. But I think it is cool that whenever you see those opportunities, you've been able to say, hey, yeah, I think this would be a good fit, and, test the waters. So.
Yeah, and what I've really appreciated about it is I do think that you've really understood the services we provide and how that fits into different companies. And obviously I was on that one conversation with you, but I've heard you bring these into leadership calls, and I think you really do understand the value we provide and the service we provide. And I know 9 months seems like a long time, but to have that grasp already in that amount of time, I think is ahead of the curve. I think a lot of people have worked for us for 9 months, and I've had conversations with them, and I've popped to Adam's office, and I'm like, I'm not sure that person really still understands what we do, Adam. So I think that the fact that you can sell it and that you can recognize pretty early on that this client is not exactly our core client has been huge in that aspect. So we are right on time here. So let's do some closing thoughts. Greg, let's just throw the one last question at you. So first 90 days, what do you think? And any tips for any of our listeners that are either thinking about applying to Summit or thinking about doing their own thing?
It's been great. I've really enjoyed it. The quality of the people, the quality of the technology has just made my ability to step in and be successful, a whole lot easier. One of the things that I appreciate, having been, a senior financial leader for a number of years, is there's still a great deal of autonomy, from the owners and from the people I work with and work for, including Jamie and Adam and Jody, one of the other owners. They say, this is your book of business. Go, be successful, do your thing. Come to us when you have questions, you want some thoughts, guidance. But we're really very autonomous, in control of our schedules, in control of our client meetings. We're in control of the client relationships, and so but we always have Jamie and Adam and Jody as support, to when we run into any challenges, any issues, clients upset about something, something they didn't like, the way something was handled. They do a great job of coming in over the top and talking through it with the client. So I've just appreciated the support and the structure, the ability to, again, control my own schedule. I was just talking to Jamie prior to this, and, just was able to have 7 days out of town for some spring break activities. And then, one of the other great things is, we have a lake house down in, that's probably, it's 7.5 hours away. You can't just get away for the weekend. You have to make it, a few days. And so I'm going to, put some technology in the car, set up, get a whole workstation set up down there. And, the beauty of that I haven't had is the ability to work from the lake house in my other positions. And so, so it's going to give me, some personal freedom. My wife's a teacher, so she's off all summer. So we're really looking forward to that flexibility, coming from the Summit relationship, and I can be, just as present with all my clients and keep it rolling.
So we'll do a special podcast about Greg's spring break at some point. It'll be a wild one, but we'll have to save that for another time. But Adam, final thoughts from you?
Yeah, just outside of just the gratitude, Greg, for being on the team and really just diving in and just kind of embracing everything, obviously. But outside of that, just knowing that no matter what your background is or your experience or anything like that, just know that whenever you dive into a relationship like this, it's going to be a little bit different, and that's okay. You just have to have confidence and just really focus and fall back on your curiosity about the business and thinking about it as if you owned the business. And then again, leveraging those skills that you have from a technical standpoint, from a financial side, just to kind of push your way through. All the rest of that stuff, will work itself out in terms of the tools and, the consulting and that kind of stuff.
Great. Well, thanks again, Greg. Thanks again, Adam. And thanks again for listening. Look forward to future episodes. And again, especially that Spring Break Greg episode. That's going to be fun.
Right.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, counting on wild.
Enjoy this podcast? Visit our website at summitcpa.net to get more tips and strategies for achieving modern CPA firm success. We're here to be a resource in this ever-changing industry.